Testament is full of types and shadows of things to come we read things there that comes back around again. And Paul told the Corinthians that talking about things to Israel, he said those things happened to them for an example or a type, that they're written for our admonition. In other words, we can look at what happened to them, and we can take the good and we can take the bad. In other words, we can use them for a pattern for our own lives, what to do and what not to do. And the writer of Ecclesiastes, we want to read this, chapter 1, 9 and 10. It says, "The thing that has been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything thereof, it may be said, see, this is new, it has been already of old time, which was before us." In other words, things runs in circles, because we got the same enemy, and man always works the same way. We've got the same temptations and passions and weaknesses, and so it happens over and over. And we want to look at something. Some of you, we've taught it before, and some of you probably remember it. So just humor me. We're going to teach it again, because it's one of those things that is fast approaching. But this time it'll be on a global scale. It's over in Genesis. A man named Joseph. Now in Genesis 41, everybody knows the story of Joseph. How that, he was sold by his brothers, and they took off down into Egypt as a slave, and how he rose to be second to Pharaoh. Now, in 41, it says this: Pharaoh's had a dream, and Joseph is interpreting Pharaoh's dream for him. So 41 and 28 says this: He saw these kine or cattle, fat ones and lean ones, coming up and eating them, and he saw corn that big full ears, and then the blast hit it and all this. But it says this: "This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after that 7 years of famine. And all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of the famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice, it is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass." He said, now we know around here that numbers mean something. And 7, it was actual 7 years, but 7 is the number of completion. So he said there's going to be 7 years, or in this case it was 7 years. But if you look at that thing, it means, as a type, there will be an area of great plenty. And then there'll be a time of great famine. Now, if you turn over to chapter 47, we see all this had started to hit. Genesis 47, verse 13. Now remember, all this came after a period of great prosperity. And then suddenly the great prosperity is over, and the famine's on. It says, "And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine." So it came on Egypt, but it reached farther than Egypt. It reached to the lands around it. And I was reading an article, it's been several years ago, I still got the book, where a guy named Grant Jeffries, and he was a scientist, an archaeologist, and he told about a princess in one of those lands there. The river had got up and washed her grave away, and they found in her grave a scroll, and where she had her scribes writing, and it said, the famine is great in my land, and I sent to Joseph in Egypt to buy corn, and he would not sell. So the famine was far-reaching. It was in Egypt. It was Pharaoh that got the dream, and it was Joseph that interpreted, but the famine was far-reaching. But and Joseph gathered up all the money. I want y'all to look at this now. And remember the types, the shadows, what has been will be. Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Now, what we've got going on here is the government stopped the flow of money. They shut it down. How many knows if money's not circulating, things ain't happening? Nothing moves. So the government took control of all the money. And I always think of this when you see all these things on television talking about buy gold, buy silver. It's the safest, it's the safest thing that you can have. Send me your worthless paper money, and I'll give you my good gold and silver. But if the government decided that either one of those was not going to be used for transaction, it would be worthless. If the government just decided, no, we're not going to use that as an exchange, because the government controls the money. Now, so he had the money, he stopped the circulation. And folks, used to, and we did it too, we printed paper money, but we had precious metals like gold and silver that backed it up, because it was a world, on the world market, it was an item of trade. You could do it. If you had gold and silver, you could buy anything on the world market. Now we're just printing money. We're printing dollars with nothing to back it up except the trust that the world has in the government, that the government's stable. We have nothing to back it up. It's not a gold and silver backed money anymore. It's a trust note. And if you go back and read the fall of the Roman Empire, this is one of the things that started there. Rome, in its time of great prosperity, it made coins that were almost solid silver, almost solid gold. The coin that you held in your hand was worth what it said. If it was $1, just talking on our terms, if it was $1, you could go and get $1 for it. It was gold or silver. But when, at her peak, when she began to get really corrupt leaders in there, they started printing their money on worthless metals, using the gold and silver to buy for themselves, to establish themselves, to build buildings for themselves, until the money that they held in their hand was worth nothing, had nothing to back it, and it was worth nothing. And so Rome began to crumble. And hey, we're come full circle. Not only us, but most of the nations in the world, folks. Took out the content, took out the worth. But when money stopped circulating, things begin to fall apart. And when people begin to lose confidence in the government worldwide, then the dollar starts going down. Right now, we're still in the time of prosperity. But with $20 trillion in debt, folks, and every economist says this can't go on. They know it. And how long can it last? We don't know. But we read. If you read this story, and you understand again that there's nothing new under the sun. It happens. And we're going to prove to you that it's going to come into a world situation. We're going to prove to you by the Bible that it will. Now, verse 15. And when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, and the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us bread. Why should we die in thy presence, for the money faileth? Had no money. Nobody would take the money. No how, but the government gathered up the money. It wasn't circulating. And Joseph said, give your cattle and I will give you for the cattle if money fails. And they brought the cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for the flocks and for the cattle of the herds and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle that year. Do you see that? All right, now the government's controlling all the money. Now the government's controlling all the industry. Without the cattle, without the horses, they have nothing. The government's got it all. Do you understand that America and most governments in the world right now control totally the industry in the nation? America, now we talk about freedom, but the government can shut down any business that does not go along with their regulations. The EPA has got now to where all the water belongs to them. If you catch the water running off of this roof, they can sue you. They can fine you. So all the industry is really under the government control. You remember back a few years ago when Obama bailed out GMC? Remember that? And shut down car dealerships all over America. He picked out the ones that he wanted to run that send new cars to. The others couldn't even get new cars. They had to sell used cars. Couldn't get new cars. The government owned the business. What we see here is the government controlling the industry. Got the money, got the industry. When that year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said unto him, we will not hide it from my Lord how that our money is spent. My Lord also has our herds of cattle, and there is not aught left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and the land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed, that we may live and not die, and the land be not desolate. And Joseph brought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field, because the famine prevailed over them, so that the land became Pharaoh's. Now, he's got the money, he's got the industry, he's got the land. Everything is in complete control of the government. Give us seed. Give us seed. And soon, and again, we look at we know what's just happening in America. And America right now is ahead of everybody else still in freedom, or most nations. Seed is becoming all hybrid. You notice that? It grows 1 year. So the government is really becoming owner of seed. Soon you will only plant what the government says plant, because you can't save the seed. Old folks, when I was coming up, saved their seed year after year after year. Yeah. No, they're already pushing that everything goes genetically. That's right, genetically modified, and it's hybrid. You don't use the poison on it. It's resistant to certain diseases. I saw where that they had made a rice seed, and one of the things that they had put in the rice seed was human saliva. Genes from human saliva, because it made the rice resistant to some kind of disease that would kill the rice. I don't know about you, but I don't want to eat rice that somebody spit in. But see, and this is not just here, folks. It's getting that way all over. And see, it's been a dream of man to own his own utopia, to be in total control. And I've told you a lot of times, I read a article where Pharaoh said, I'm looking at Pharaoh and said Pharaoh. Winston Churchill said back in his time, the only way to have world peace is to have a one world government who had power to enforce its rules. And people say, oh, how can you do that? Well, if the money can stop, if the government controls the industry, if the government owns all the land, if the government owns all the seed, they are in control, folks. Period. Nothing you can do about it. That's just what happened right here. Nothing they can do about it. Yeah, and it looks good to so many people too. And see, right now, and everybody knows, and you can, if you listen, you'll hear people talking, that we need to get away from this monetary system, this paper, and this, you need to get away from that because it takes more and more and more, and it's worth less and less and less. It will become a digital system, a digital monetary system. Great part of it right now. But this is just the baby steps coming from the big steps that's coming. It's just the baby steps. Yeah, you see? But again, it all comes by whatever the government has set up as a method of commerce. And if the government says tomorrow, we're no longer using gold and silver as an exchange, your gold and silver ain't worth nothing. That's right. Same way, tomorrow, if the government says, hey, the paper money that we printed, we're not going to use that anymore. This is the system we're going to use. You can have a room full of paper money, and nobody will take it. There ain't no gold in there. Government. Now, and as for the people, look at this. He removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt even to the other. Only the land of the priest brought he not, for the priest had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion with Pharaoh, that Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their lands. All right? When the government owns everything, he puts the people wherever he wants them. Their job is whatever the government says their job is. Moves them. But he leaves the priest intact. Why? Because man has always been a spiritual being. If you can control his spiritual way of thinking, you can control him easier. So he had the priests there. Didn't sell their land. He fed them. But they were absolutely then indebted to Pharaoh. They upheld Pharaoh. Pharaoh upheld them. But the people, wherever the government wanted them, they moved them and told them what to do. You say, well, that's far-fetched. Do y'all remember back when President Clinton was in office? And it never went anywhere then because the time wasn't right. But Miss Clinton then came up with an idea. She said, we're wasting time and money on education because we're educating everybody kind of on the same playing field when everybody doesn't have the same talent. Y'all remember this? She brought it up. She said, we need to give all the children, when they start out, a test, an aptitude test, to see what they're good at. And then we tailor their education to whatever they're good at so that they can have that job for the rest of their life. In other words, if you take that little test and you're good with your hands, they'll put you somewhere where you're using your hands. If you're good at other things, that's where the government will put you. Yeah. The government will train you for the job you're going to have for the rest of your life. Well, that didn't go anywhere then. But the time wasn't right then. Ezekiel, the 7th chapter. I want us to turn right there and let's read this. I'll get over there in a minute. Ezekiel, the 7th chapter. Now, Ezekiel was a prophet of Israel. And he wrote this prophecy to Israel. But we have a parallel prophecy going on here. Just like over in Acts, you remember when the Holy Ghost fell on that day of Pentecost, and Peter said, this is that which was prophesied of by the prophet Joel. Well, if you'll see what the prophet Joel said, or if you just read that in Acts, you'll find out that that prophecy was not completed in the time that Peter was there when the Holy Ghost fell. It just began, and we still haven't saw the moon turn into blood red, into blood, and the sun turn into sackcloth of ash, and we still hadn't saw part of that. It was just the beginning. It's a dual prophecy. And it even says it shall come to pass in the last days, saith the Lord, that these things is going to happen. So this is the same. This is a parallel prophecy in Ezekiel, and we'll show you that. Look at verse 19. And they shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, because it is a stumbling block of iniquity. You see that? It said they'll just cast it out. Worthless. Zephaniah, the first chapter in verse 19, kind of says the same thing. So there's never been a time in man's history when silver and gold was not used as an exchange for good, as a monetary system. But Ezekiel and Zephaniah, and what we just saw happening in Egypt, so there's coming a time when the whole monetary system will change. And the silver and the gold will be worthless, because everything will come out of a one world government. See, go back and check your history. There's never been a time when man didn't use silver or gold. So what he's saying there to Israel is a parallel prophecy, and it's still coming. It's still coming. When everything that we have depended on to sustain us, to make us rich, will be gone, and that won't be we won't be able to be upheld by that any longer. See, we can't hardly fathom the idea of a government that controls everything. But if you look, we're almost there now. See? It takes that mindset. It could not have happened as I was growing up. People were proud. Yeah. People were patriotic. They would have been war. But now, they're lining up. Well, we're over Revelations right now. But let's look at that. But Brenda, when I was working, I had a young man working for me, was 25 years old, and that's all he wanted. And he finally got it, was to get on disability where I won't have to work. Some doctor finally signed him up. He had high blood pressure. How many people got high blood pressure? Well, see, that's where we're coming to. And people doesn't see it because we don't want to see this. We don't want to see it happening. But it is happening. It's going to happen. And where Mike was talking about here in Revelation 6, it's when the seals are being opened. And it's the seals of judgment in the end time. And 6:6 says this, and he says this is symbolic of a reality. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts saying, a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see that thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Well, let's go up and read verse 5 now. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hands. And everybody knows what balances is. That equals things out. And he said, he was saying, a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. These are grain foods. How many knows that you don't have a famine if you ain't got maters? You have a famine if you don't have grain. That's right. You don't have a famine if you don't have cucumbers. You have a famine if you don't have grain. Now here he sees, John sees these judgments falling. And here's this guy riding this black horse of famine with the balances. And he's talking about a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. In those days, a penny was a day's wages. Yes. A day's wages. If you put that down to today's In today's way of looking at things, it'd be a loaf of bread for a day's wages. And he said, see that you hurt not the oil and the wine. When this was written, the oil and the wine symbolics the highest echelon of rich people. You know, if you had oil and if you had wine, you were rich. So he said, we're going to measure out this grain. We're going to give folks what we want them to have. What did we just read in Egypt? We're going to give everybody what we feel like they need. But don't touch the ruling class, because you got to have folks in the ruling class to make this thing work. Just like the priest, and we're going to show you that too. He had the priest to kind of keep them in line. Don't touch the oil and the wine. In America, the land of the free, they pass health care for you and me, but they don't use it. See? They tell us everything that we can, but that we can have, but they don't use it. Don't touch the ruling class. Don't touch the ruling class. See, that's just, and that again, that's not just America, folks. We're one step behind the rest of the world coming into this. America was the last stronghold of the last chance for freedom, and we sold it out. Well, can I tell you something? For this to work, for the government controlling everything to work, you can't have the sick and you can't have the old. You say, well, no, that's just crazy. Wait and see. Say, wait and see. Well, when we lost the sanctity of human life, and we did it with the babies, when we started killing and selling baby parts, when we lost that humanity. Now it's it's a jungle. It's a survival of the fittest, and old sick people cannot be on the government till and it work. They're not bringing anything into the government. It won't work. So, and if somebody kills a pregnant woman, they charge them with double murder. And people say, well, that's scary. No, it ain't. It's reality, but know this. You got to keep your eye on what the truth is. If you want out of here before all this comes, then let's get this work done so we'll be out of here. Because the bride's going to make herself ready. And everything that says that the church is not, don't get your eyes on what the churches are doing. Get your eyes on what Jesus said. That's right. Too many folks got their eyes on churches that has turned themselves into organizations of a business organization, organizations of profit, not an organization trying to win souls. That's right. Sin has become an ugly word in a lot of churches, folks. See, if you say sin, though, I'm saying, hey, ooh, that's ugly. Don't be. I even heard a guy say, we don't talk much about sin because sin is such a negative word. Hell is too. We got to hurry. I want to get there. Turn over to Revelation 13, and he's saying it's all of this is symbolic, but it's things that is truthfully going to happen. 13:3. It talks about this one world government that's coming. And I saw one of his heads as if it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. All the world. I want you to notice that all the world. So what John's talking about in 13, what he's talking about in 17, is considered, it takes in all the world. Now, verse 7, and it was given to him to make war with the saints, this is the Antichrist, and to overcome them, and power was given to him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. One world power. One world power that is controlling every aspect of human life on the planet. Well, that can't be. Yes, it can. And with one trigger, and I've talked to you about a trigger event, one trigger event will bring this thing together so fast it'll make your head swim. a nuclear exchange, if somebody hacked in and shut down the banks, and the government stepped up and said, "Oh, we got it figured out. We got it worked out. This is what we're going to do." People would have to do that. See, and we understand that. We're $20 trillion in debt now, folks. We're getting to where we can't even pay the interest on it. So this thing is going to happen. It's going to happen. Now, he says, look at this. We're going to start reading at verse 11 and just read down some. "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." It's a religious leader. Now, what did Pharaoh do in the time of Joseph? He took care of the religious folks, and they took care of him. "And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and came and causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doth make great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of man, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and lived." You see this? He's upholding the Antichrist. "And he had power to give life to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many that would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he had that mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of the name. Here's wisdom, let him understand and count the number of the beast, for the number is for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, or 666. We see here a world power. We see a world religion that is bringing everybody under that world power, saying, pay attention to this. Pay attention to the Antichrist. He's got the answers. Now, if you could buy stuff with gold at this time, if you could buy stuff with paper money at this time, if you could buy stuff with silver at this time, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Because you could go out here, with a handful of money and buy what you wanted to buy. Folks would take it if it was still, money was still being exchanged for stuff. Only through a digital money system will this work. Never could have happened before. But just like Miss Brenda said, it is happening now. Yes. And we're just seeing the baby steps on the way to this thing coming to fulfillment. A digital money system where when you work, it shows up in your bank account by a number. You ain't got money in your pocket. You got a card. Gonna be a number. And when you buy out, you're out. Because a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny. The government will tell you what you can buy and how much of it, just to sustain you. Just everybody equal. And that's, socialism's been hollering for that for years. Socialism. But it's coming worldwide. And we see, and we're out of time, but if you go over and read Revelation 18, it talks about a city called Babylon. Babylon means confusion, and it's the world political system that you're seeing here. And it talks about in 1 hour, it all crashes. Mm-hmm. Babylon, great Babylon. It says the merchants, that has got rich on account of her, as by trading with her, will stand afar off weeping because no man buys their goods anymore. Yeah, see, folks look at it as a city, but it's the entire global system. Yeah, folks looked at it, folks are teachers, that's New York for years. But New York, again, that just shows you that, that's where all the trade center is. But when this thing crashes, it'll crash worldwide, folks. There'll be a new system, read years and years ago, where the globalists It was an article where the globalist was writing and saying what had to happen, and it said for there to be a global system, a new global system set up of governance, the old global system had to fail. Yes. To be a world order religion come into power, they had to destroy the old order of religion. And it's happening. It's happening. Folks, it had been many years ago. If you'd have stepped into any church in America and said, Islam is worshiping the same God y'all are, you would have been rebuked and thrown out of there. But now from the pulpit, we've got to get together with our Muslim brothers. I have no Muslim brother. See, I don't have none. I pray for them. I pray for their conversion. But they're serving an idol God. Show me one time in the Bible where Jesus ever said that we should embrace those serving idol gods. No. Matter of fact, if you read your Bible, it says, come out from among them and be ye separate. See? But all of this, as the world eases on in this direction, all of it will look good to everybody that does not understand the biblical principle that's set up here. That doesn't understand what's working. It'll look good because they'll see no way. You take Jesus out of the mix. You take God out of the mix, folks. Man becomes desperate when he don't know where his next meal is coming from, where he don't know what he's going to do next. He becomes desperate. But when you understand, my God is not hampered by circumstance. I'm just going to hold to him. Desperation starts to break up. And faith starts to work. See? Because it will work. But we're moving into a time that the world has never saw before and will never see again after this time. Because after this time, there's going to be a true one world government under Jesus Christ. He's coming to make all things new. But before that, and again, nowhere in the Bible, folks, are you going to find this rosy picture that is being preached by so many of the world evangelists and pastors and right now. We preach a rosy picture so that people will financially support us. Let me tell you something, folks. I got to be like Abraham. I have lifted up my hand to the Most High God. That's right. Period. I'm going to teach and I'm going to preach what this Bible says. I saw a thing today, and it had this guy on there, and I'm not knocking the guy. I don't know. It showed this guy, and he's got his hand raised, and it said, he's taking up money. Be the first to donate. That's what it said. Here's where you can donate. He's taking up money. Well, bless his heart. I hope he gets all he needs. But you got to show me something before I start putting money into it. Because if I support that which God does not support, I'm on the wrong end. See? And God's got a system of taking care of his own. It's called seed time harvest. And I'm kind of like on that thing. I'm kind of like Jesse Duplantis said one time. And Jesse God has prospered him. Yes, he did. But I saw Jesse Duplantis one time, and he got right into the camera, pulled the camera right up. He said, every time I turn television on, I see somebody saying, send me your money or I'm going off the air. He said, go off the air. He said, if God's not supporting you to be on the air, go off the air. And that's exactly the way I feel, folks. If God does not uphold us in our work, it's because he's got something else for us. Time to move on. See? Time to move on. But don't get caught up in those who are trying to make an agenda work that God has never ordained. Because there's a lot out there that God hadn't ordained that's working good on the world system. And Jesus said, that the the mammon talking about unrighteous riches. He said they're wiser in their generation than the children of light. In other words, what he was saying is people of the world got a better grip on how to make money than the children of light. So just because they're making money does not mean. Now God has blessed folks and out there and prospered them, and thank God for it. But everything that looks prosperous isn't prosperous in God's eyes. Right. Look at the words. It's like we talked about last week about the apostles and the prophets and all these. Look and see if they're doing the work. And we're getting off on something else, but we closed. We closed. There's a brave new world coming, and we're seeing it.